Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to start. I'm just going to set up things very quickly. I have to share my screen, and then I'll be right with you to get started on the session. Okay, bear with me for a moment here. I hope you can see my screen. All right, so hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the first session out of 6 webinars to present to you a number of thematic agenda items scheduled for discussion at the upcoming 28th session of the CBD's subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and technological advice, or SBSTTA. We have sessions that are provided to you by the Co-op for CBD project, which aims to facilitate technical and scientific cooperation for decisions under the CBD to be informed by the best available knowledge and advice towards the achievement of the 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature. Today's session will focus on marine and coastal biodiversity. And as you see, we have 6 sessions that are scheduled this week until next Monday included. One on IPBES tomorrow, one on synthetic biology on Wednesday, one on planning, monitoring, reporting, and review on Thursday, one on the program of work on protected areas on Friday, and then next Monday on sustainable wildlife management. So, as I said, today's session is focusing on marine and coastal biodiversity and presented by Ute Jacob. She's a marine ecologist by training. She did her PhD on the structure and functioning of Antarctic marine ecosystems. She worked on how food web approaches can support marine conservation and is now the liaison for science and conservation at the Helmholtz Institute for Functional Marine Biodiversity at the University of Oldenburg, where she co-leads the Transfer Office for Marine Biodiversity Change. She and her colleagues have implemented the Knowledge Exchange Network for Marine Biodiversity as part of the Horizon Europe-funded BioAgora project, and she has also participated in putting together one of our Co-op for CBD technical briefs on marine restoration. Ute will be presenting the agenda item on marine and coastal biodiversity, for which the CBD Secretariat has now published document CBD/SBSTTA-28/7. And before I hand it over to Ute, I'll just go over a few ground rules for this session. So the thematic presentation will last 30 minutes, and it will be followed by a 30-minute Q&A. Please keep your microphones shut unless you are speaking. This sentence makes no sense, but I will fix it for the next session. Please raise your hand to ask a question to the speaker or speakers. Introduce yourself when you speak for the first time so we know who is asking the question. And as you may already know, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Co-op for CBD website. And if you do not agree to being showcased on the recording on the website, please inform me, and we will make sure to cut that part out of the webinar before we post it. The PowerPoint presentations will also be posted on the Co-op for CBD website. And lastly, you can join our Co-op for CBD expert database by scanning the QR code below. And again, this presentation will be available, so you will have access to that QR code later on. I will stop sharing my screen now. Okay. And Ute, please go ahead. You have the floor.
Yeah, hello everyone. Can you see my screen? Sorry, that started
yes,
from the wrong end.
At least perfectly.
Okay, thank you very much. So what I'm going to do today is I will introduce to you the agenda item 1617 on marine and coastal biodiversity, and it's really from ocean depths to island shores, advancing biodiversity action under the CBD decision. Just as a little reminder, why biodiversity and especially coastal and marine biodiversity matters. This is an illustration from Woods Hole to see how important and how dominant coastlines and marine systems on our Earth really are. 70%, more than 70% are covered by the ocean. Coastal and marine ecosystems support food security, livelihoods, and climate regulation. Islands harbor a disproportionate share of global biodiversity and endemic species. These ecosystems are among the most vulnerable to biodiversity loss and climate change, but also to our well-being. When we look at the agenda item, there were 3 overarching goals to address implementation gaps. Some biodiversity targets lack sufficient guidance and tools, requiring new guidance, especially for marine biodiversity and sharing of best practices and strengthening capacity building. Then scaling up to support. Many existing marine, coastal, and island biodiversity commitments are only partially or not implemented and require increased financing, technical cooperation, technology transfer, and capacity development, particularly for developing countries. And of course, strengthening partnerships, global and regional organizations, networks, and their initiatives are encouraged to enhance their efforts and collaborate to support the implementation of the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework while building on existing work and avoiding duplication and fragmentation. There's so many great marine initiatives out there, but they work mostly in parallel and hardly collaborate. So this is really a call for more collaboration. If we have a closer look at the gaps listed for the marine and coastal biodiversity item, it's the restoration of degraded marine ecosystems, effective MPAs and OECMs, human-wildlife conflict, geoengineering impacts, marine genetic diversity, deep sea and ecosystem connectivity, pollution impacts, nature-based solutions, blue carbon ecosystems, sea ice biodiversity, sustainable aquaculture, urban blue spaces, biodiversity values and IAPLC integration, and marine genetic resources and DSI benefit sharing. The gaps and areas in need of it are should really receive a focus to support the implementation of the coming Montreal Biodiversity Framework. So if we look at the gaps, these gaps are highly interconnected and can be grouped into a few reinforcing themes like ecosystem conservation and restoration, keeping in mind that restoration is not an activity that should allow us to destroy first. Just because we can restore something, we should still protect it. Climate resilience, sustainable ocean use, knowledge and monitoring, and governance and equity. They form connected pathways for implementation. For instance, under the umbrella of science and knowledge, understanding ecosystem, genetics, deep sea biodiversity, sea ice, and emergent pressures. Under the umbrella conservation and restoration, MPAs, ecosystem restoration, blue carbon ecosystems, and nature-based solutions. Threat reduction and sustainable use is tackling pollution, reducing human-wildlife conflict, and improve aquaculture management. And then under the umbrella governance and equity, integrating indigenous peoples and local communities, biodiversity values, and fair benefit sharing from marine genetic resources. If we look at the primary focus to tackle these gaps, it should really be ecosystem recovery to ensure the restoration of degraded marine ecosystems, area-based conservation, species conservation, emergent risk and precautionary principles, species resilience, knowledge generation, threat reduction, ecosystem-based management, climate mitigation and adaptation, climate-sensitive ecosystems, sustainable use, human well-being, inclusive governance, equity, and governance. So if you, for instance, to understand how these gaps are interlinked, here is an example for sustainable aquaculture. So if we would just work to improve sustainable aquaculture, we really need to consider with the restoration of degraded marine ecosystems, human-wildlife conflict, pollution impacts, biodiversity values, and IPC integration. We cannot just view this alone. Same is, of course, true for the others. So you see these gaps are highly interlinked. What does it mean? Progress on any single gap depends on progress across others. Effective marine biodiversity conservation requires an integrated approach that links science, restoration, sustainable use, climate action, and equitable governance. So really to address these gaps and at the same time supporting the GBF targets. To achieve these targets, one of the main steps is really to strengthen the science policy interface. Many gaps stem from insufficient knowledge of marine ecosystems, genetic diversity, deep sea environments, and emerging pressures. Actions here could be to expand marine biodiversity monitoring and observation systems, improve access to biodiversity, genetic, and ecosystem data, promote knowledge sharing across sectors and regions, and support research on cumulative impacts in ecosystem connectivity. The outcome here would clearly be better informed and evidence-based decision-making. Pathways to accelerate the implementation of this CBD decision is to strengthen science and monitoring, scale up restoration and protected areas, implement integrated ocean management, and invest in climate nature solutions, empower indigenous peoples and local communities, mobilize finance and capacity and technology. And COP4CBD has really gathered great teams to tackle three of the most important topics on the implications of polar ecosystem change for achieving target 3, 4, and 8, for marine and coastal ecosystem restoration, and then from EPSA science to high seas actions. You can download these briefs on the COP4CBD site, and I'm pretty sure links will be shared. So this talk here today was really the introduction into the agenda item. And if you wonder yourself why she was so fast, so there was supposedly a second speaker, so I kept my slides short. This, of course, leaves us to more discussion time. So, and with this, I thank you very much. I invite you to follow the Knowledge Exchange Network for Marine Biodiversity on LinkedIn and connect with us this way and become part of us. And I'm ready to take your questions.
Many thanks, Ute, for your presentation. I think this is very helpful in understanding what's coming up in the next few weeks for preparing SBSTA. And as you mentioned, we'll start taking questions. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask Ute a question? Don't be shy. And if no one has any questions, I surely have some questions. Oh, I see a hand up. Joyce, please.
Hi everyone. My name is Joyce. I'm from Kenya. My question is linked to the governance and equity component. And I see we've indicated in terms of engagement with indigenous people and local communities. And sometimes local communities are not, I call them homogeneous. So we have women, we have young people. How do we ensure either during the intervention on this substar to ensure that also women and youth are incorporated, because they do a lot of work on marine and coastal biodiversity conservation. If I give an example for Kenya, we have some women, some youth that do a lot of work around there. So how do we, ensure that on the aspect of governance and equity, even women and youth are included? And maybe so post that when you're doing, let's say, knowledge building or capacity development, then they're recognized because they are in the document. So yeah.
Ute, do you want to take this question right now, or would you like to take a few questions at once to wait and answer them? That's either way is fine with me.
I mean, we can take it question by question. And I mean, if there's another person has a question to the same topic, then hopefully we can start a lively discussion.
Yes.
I completely agree with you. So it is very important to have women and youth just as much represented as any other stake or rights holder group. And engagement is, of course, always tricky. Of course, they need to gain visibility. So visibility in the documents would be really encouraged. So if you, for instance, have a commentary or anything, I encourage you to submit that, but also to be proactive in a sense, because it should be a dialogue. It should really be you or these groups communicating their needs, and really then to identify joint pathways so that everyone can be heard. And I don't know, Camille, how you do that in COP for CBD to engage everyone. You might also want to say a few words.
Thank you for that. Yes, I was just thinking we do have a few activities around that. And one of the things I can think of is that in April in Paris, as part of the Co-op for CBD project, there was a training workshop meant for youth and other major groups and stakeholders at the CBD to kind of familiarize them with the CBD process. They also had kind of a mock session of a CBD negotiation, and that is part of the work package under Co-op for CBD that does capacity building activities, and we really try to engage with different groups. There was also a training in Budapest 10 days ago, I would say almost 2 weeks ago actually now, that was meant more for negotiators and teams and stakeholders from the Central and Eastern European region. So we really try to engage with different groups, both from different areas than the initial scope of the project or associated countries, as we say it, but also with different stakeholders. And this is why I mentioned the workshop in April in Paris that aimed mostly at youth groups and NGOs and civil society and different types of stakeholders. So I hope that also answers your question. And I wonder if there are any other questions for Ute.
And just on this point, I don't want to put her on the spot, but I see that Joana Soares is here. Maybe you would like to also put the link in the chat for the Networking Fridays.
Yes, of course, I will do that. Thank you
More
very
work
much.
for Joanna.
And Joanna,
No,
maybe
pleasure.
say a few words about it. Really sorry, I didn't want to put you like in the lion's den, but maybe you can say a few words about it.
Yes, I was trying to put my camera on, but it's not working. I don't know why. So the Marine Biodiversity Networking Fridays are a series of webinars that are organized by the Marine Biodiversity Observation Network, or shortly the MBON, and the Air Center. We host a monthly Friday dedicated to marine biodiversity. And these webinars have a wide audience. So we have an international audience with representatives from countries all around the world. And I will put a link in the chat for you to be aware of them. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Viet.
That's perfect. Thank you. Great. And I wonder why the camera isn't working, because I remember when putting together this link that it would be able to allow participants to turn on their camera. So I'll look for that. In the meantime, I see that Peter has their hand up. So please feel free to go ahead and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thank you. My name is Peter Njeru. I work as a policy officer for Africa region at BirdLife International. And well, reflecting on the various gaps that have been presented, and also considering the various multilateral environmental agreements meetings that are happening. For example, we had our Oceans Conference recently. Also, the CBD is coming up, and soon within this region there will be the Nairobi Convention. I'm just keen to understand how we are enhancing coherence across all these platforms to ensure that all these gaps and issues facing our marine species are effectively addressed, so that every convention, every international meeting is not working in a siloed way. Yeah, thank you.
I really would love to provide a solution for that, but we are working all very hard towards a solution, because you are completely right. To avoid duplication and to avoid fragmentation, it is really, really important that we are aware who is out there, who is doing what is discussed where. And here, as Camille pointed out, you have the opportunity to register as an expert in the COP4 CBD expert database. You have the opportunity to join the Knowledge Exchange Network for Marine Biodiversity, where we really try to connect people and initiatives, not to be a new network or to do something new or to be just another database or something like this, but really to put on the map who is out there. It's a long process, but we really hope also with the presence of COP4 CBD in all CBD related processes, with the project Respin in the IPBES related processes, with BioAgora as the direct science service for biodiversity, facilitating the science policy interface, that we get a better grip of what is happening where, and to guide these things together. But for that, we need your help. So please join the expert database, join the networks, so that we know that you are out there and what you are doing.
Thank you for that, Ute. And if I may add, I do feel like at this point, a lot of the effort for synergies is at the individual level of people in their own administrations or organizations trying to meet other people working on other topics and making sure they align. And I think it really starts with that, because in some countries I've seen that sometimes people who work with the CBD don't necessarily know their counterparts working on the UNCCD or working on the climate COPs, or same with people who work with IPCC. In some countries don't know their counterparts who work on IPBES. And I think starting with that and discussing how similar topics are addressed in different arenas by different people within the same country, that is a great start. And the projects that you mentioned, Ute, do help with that and make sure that people meet each other and start working together. But then it also needs to kind of permeate into higher institutions so that it's more institutionalized in the processes themselves. And I think we're all working towards that. So hopefully it'll happen soon because we need it. Are there any other questions for Ute? If not, I would have one if that's fine. And I wonder, Ute, if you can tell us a little bit more about your feeling and what you would expect to maybe come up in the SBSTA discussions on marine and coastal biodiversity. I know EPSAs are going to be a big topic, but it's not the only thing that's in the CBD document. Yeah, it would be great to get your feeling about what people should start preparing for in terms of discussions and what might come up.
No, I mean, I think what people really should preparing for is to, make a stand for biodiversity. That is really what we are seeing, how political discussions are changing, how political priorities are changing, given the geopolitical situations we are in. Next to every country is feeling the effects of wars, of course, some more severe than others. But my worry would be that biodiversity related topics are weakened. And I think here it is really important at SBSTA to make a stand for marine biodiversity, because marine biodiversity is, of course, linked to all these issues that are related to human well-being. So it is related to security, it is related to defense. So it's really to bring up front how important it is for us to safeguard marine and coastal biodiversity, because we are at the same time safeguarding our well-being.
Great, thank you for that, Ute. It's inspiring, even though the context itself can be a little bit depressing sometimes, but I think that's where we need all the more effort to make sure biodiversity is taken into account. Does anyone have a question, a follow-up question on this topic or any other topic?
I mean, what I maybe can add is what I really tried to get across in the presentation. I would also be very careful not to push one gap, because what I showed is how highly they are interlinked. So it's basically when you discuss climate change mitigation or biodiversity conservation, what is more important? You cannot have one without the other. So here, if we really want to target the gaps, it's really important to see, at least to have an overview of how these gaps are interlinked.
That's great. Yes, thank you. And I think if I may advertise once more the technical briefs that we have produced under the Co-op for CBD project, 3 of them are linked to marine and coastal biodiversity for that same specific reason, that they're all interlinked. So we have one on EPSAs and BBNJ, one on marine restoration, and one on polar regions. And all 3, I would say, are very interesting, obviously, but please go ahead and give them a read. I think they can be enlightening and would be very complementary to this webinar. But I feel like I'm talking way too much today. So again, if you have questions, please go ahead and ask them. And if not, I can also close this session and make sure that the recording is available on the website for you and your colleagues to use freely. I'll give it maybe another bit of time, and then if no other questions come up, then I will close the session, I guess.
maybe what you could add to the chat, Camille, if I may, is when the marine restoration brief will be presented.
So today is the session on marine and coastal biodiversity, because the way we're handling the online training sessions this week are based on agenda items, not necessarily on one specific brief.
Oh.
So we have mentioned all 3 marine related briefs today. And I've pasted the link to the library in the chat, and I see that Alex has done it also. So you all have access to the briefs through that webpage, and feel free to go and read them. And tomorrow will be the session on IBBES, presenting the business and biodiversity assessment with Matt Jones, who is one of the co-chairs of that assessment, who also participated in the drafting of a technical brief on the business and biodiversity assessment and how it can feed into discussions on mainstreaming at the upcoming SBI. But I don't want to, spoil too much because there's much more coming this week. So yes, I mean, I don't see any other hands and I don't see any questions in the chat. So unless someone else wants to jump in right now, I think maybe I'll close the session. And thank you so much, Ute, for your presentation. It's been great seeing you and being able to have this chat with you. I hope people got a lot of inspiring information from this session, and we will be sharing more information on the briefs and how to register after this session, and probably next week once all the sessions have taken place. So good luck in preparing for SBSTA to you all. It's always intense, but it's also fun. And I might see some of you in Nairobi as well, or I might see some of you tomorrow in the next training session, who knows? But yeah, thank you again, Ute, and thank you to everyone. And I will close this session. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.